All right, very excited for this next session titled AI SDR Agent Cases for Outbound. And I think sometimes, guys, when we think about AI SDRs, we think of it primarily around cold calling, but AI SDRs can do so much more than that. And in this session, we're going to really specifically talk about AI SDRs, how they can help sales leaders scale their outbound efforts without sacrificing either quality or pipeline. So very excited in this session to have with us two great panelists, Daniel Vasilev, he's the co-founder of Relevance AI, and Kieran Snaith, SVP of Revenue Operations for Qualified. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you for having us.
So I think to get us started, I'd like to just set the stage and talk about what are some of the typical functions performed by an outbound specific AI SDR. Maybe Daniel, let's start with you.
Yeah, happy to. I mean, look, just as a kind of point of clarification almost, when we think about SDRs at Relevance, we think of them very specifically as tools that can help you elevate the work you're doing. A lot of the industry tends to think of them more as like spray and pray approaches. How can we just juice up volume and not think about the quality too much? So what we do at Relevance is we help companies build an AI workforce. We help them train these agents to replicate niche, high quality work. And when it comes to SDRs in particular, what we typically do is just ask, like, what does the top performing rep do? And how can we help replicate that? And so this might involve tasks like research and qualification. It might involve tasks like creating outbound sequencing. It might involve creating tasks like, in Qualified's case, like trying to highlight and identify which personas are correct to reach out to, who is above the power line or below the power line. So when you think about the role that one of your sales reps is doing for top of funnel and all the different jobs to be done that go into that, that's where we think kind of AI agents can help them and help elevate some of the work they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Trina, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I think for me, the things that we really looked at and were critical of are what are the activities or the tasks that we don't want an SDR doing? Like ultimately, we want to maximize for the conversations they're having and ultimately the pipeline that they're generating. So for us, it's a lot about like account research, account tiering, right? Like, do you have a good understanding of the account, the technographics, the firmographics? You know, our AI SDR agent is able to go and gather that information, standardize these notes, and make it really easy to leverage from their prospecting, right? Like, what does the buying team look like? Who are the 5 individuals that you're going to reach out to that kind of meet our ICP and maybe a decision maker for this type of software? So identifying those individuals, doing that account-based research, and then also building that email and that outreach, right? So creating that sequence and reaching out to those prospects to essentially book a meeting or help them learn more about the product.
Daniel, as the founder of an AI SDR company, I'd love to hear you kind of tell some success stories and use cases specifically for some of the most successful companies you have using Bosch. Can you give us a couple of those?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, just to set the stage for everyone, we don't see ourselves as an AI SDR company. We see ourselves as an AI workforce company. So we've got organizations that build a whole variety of agents for a whole variety of tasks with us. The AI SDR is just a really powerful space that you can get started in with work that tends to be quite repetitive and typically is really important to the business, right? Like, this is pipeline generation. This can make or break any business if you have enough pipeline in there. So I think it's a really good use case to get started with, but it's not necessarily the only one that you should be thinking about when deploying agents. Some of our most successful customers are doing a variety of different things. The way we, again, think about an AI SDR is that if it's going to be successful in your organization, it has to be as good as your top performing rep, and it has to be doing the niche things that your top performing reps are doing. And so how you measure success there might vary. But like, if we just look at very, very kind of outcome-based metrics, like let's talk about pipeline generated, book meetings. We've got one customer who processes 100,000 leads per year. And per month, that meant that they can only process a small fraction of that with their team. Now they're processing it on fully autonomous mode of agents, and then that feeds their people highly qualified opportunities. They're getting a 2 to 3x volume of qualified opportunities with the same amount of people. And again, we can see other organizations beyond kind of just specifically outbound and maybe use cases for sales. They're deploying these agents and then measuring their success based on how well they're performing the work that previously was done by people. And I think that's really the benchmark for agents. If an agent is highly capable, it can help rival what a person was doing in C. So then that person can actually spend time doing something else versus doing that task all day, every day. And that's how we tend to kind of evaluate performance. It's not just the outcomes for like book meetings. That's an important part of it, but actually how well does the agent perform and do its task?
Kieran, how does that align with the use cases you're seeing inside of Qualified?
Yeah, it aligns well. So, I've been a customer of Relevance now for almost a year. Love the Relevance product and the Relevance team. We've done a lot of great work with them. We really started with just the AI outbound SDR use case, right? And what I've learned is anything's possible with Relevance. So like we've really nailed the AI SDR use case with both manufactured a human, built Copilot, and we're probably working towards autopilot here in the next, 3 to 6 months. But we're also doing a lot more than just AI SDR outbound work, right? There are things that maybe the operations team would have done in the past, clean data, populate account research. We're now in a position where we just work with the Relevance team to build these agents and build these processes. Some other examples of this is even just scoring like contacts, for instance. Are these contacts above the line or below the line? And why, right? There's a lot of like questions that we want to ask of our data that we have been unable to ask these questions and get standardized answers. And now we use Relevance for this. So even just getting outside of that AI SDR use case, think like data cleanliness, data hygiene, doing research, populating technographics, firmographics, and scoring what our humans are actually doing, right? So for us, it's a horizontal processing layer across the entire tech stack that allows us to understand, what's going well, what's not going well, where is there opportunity for improvement. But anytime that we want to maybe change something that we know is going to be a heavy lift, we're assessing bringing a Relevance agent in to help us with those workloads.
Kieran, next question I think is still for you. And you oversaw the release of Bosch within Qualified. And I think sometimes when people think about these tools, it can be intimidating if they haven't used them before, just how to get started. Can you walk through the rollout process a little bit and talk about what it took from a performance standpoint to feel comfortable like letting it loose on your team?
Yeah. So I think we were building for about 30 to 60 days. We took one of our best BDRs, one of our best outbound reps, and we put them on this project as kind of a coordinator. And the litmus test for us was, his name's Rich Campbell. We said, Rich, when you tell us that this agent is as good as you, then we're on to something here. I think it took about 30 to 60 days of just iterating on this model, continuing to like tweak and fine tune. And we eventually got there. And Rich was like, this is as good as me. Like, I can't write emails better than this thing. It's right on par with what I would do. And that's when we started to scale it out and really involve it in our go-to-market processes, Matt. So first was kind of get that test done. And then we said, great, you're going to give it a quota. We're going to give Bosch a quota. And we gave it the same quota that your average human would have inside of Qualified. And it absolutely crushed it in Q4. It was the top of our leaderboard from a BDR perspective, both on S1 and S2. So it was really good at this volume game, and it really nailed it in Q4. And that's when we said, okay, great. We've proven that we can build a human or build capacity with this by kind of building an AI human, if you will. Then we started to say, well, this is more of a program. Let's give Bosch a territory. So what we did is we moved a lot of our reps up market into enterprise and commercial, and we took our lower segments, we call them bronze and iron, and we said, hey, we're going to have Bosch and this program source all those deals because we don't want our high value humans kind of sourcing, these lower market like deals. We want them focused on the enterprise and commercial accounts. So it did really well there. Now it's a program. It's, I think its goals are something around $20 million this year from the Relevance program alone. And now we're assessing things like Copilot and autopilot. So outside of just, building capacity, manufacturing a human with Bosch, how can it help our humans get to their number? How can it help them do research? How can it help them be better at their job? And we're doing Copilot so that we can eventually do autopilot, right? Let's figure out what these triggers and thresholds are going to be so that we can just automatically trigger Bosch to go and do the work on behalf of a human. And then we'll be in a position to raise productivity, raise quotas, things like that.
So let's move a little bit from words to numbers. And I'd love to talk about the results we're seeing here. Daniel, can you share some examples of what some of your customers are seeing, maybe before and after, as well as sort of the impact it's having on their organizations?
Yeah, I mean, so the numbers I quoted earlier, like we saw a 2 to 3x increase in pipeline for 100,000 leads that previously they were only processing less than 10%. We had another customer that went from processing $1 million objects per year from 12 months to 4 weeks, and at a cost that was a reduction of about 4x as well. So not only could they go through more of their capacity, but they could actually go through at a higher quality and a lower cost. And that was basically replacing a BPO. We have another customer that increased their conversion rates from 5% to 35% when it came to some of their inbound webinar and book demos and things like that. So I'd say these numbers always vary depending on the company. The important bit is if you have operational rigor, if you have operational maturity and a process that works, and you can replicate that with an agent, then you should be able to see results. And that's not through magic. It's not like, oh, this agent is doing something magical. It's just simply, did we increase our speed to lead? Like, are we responding faster? Are we more personalized now? Are we more targeted? Are we contacting the right people? Because when you think about it, right, if we have only so much time of the day and our reps can only spend so much time researching an account before they have to move to the next one, can we just level that process up a little? Can we make sure instead of having 1 hour, we've done 10 hours worth of work? So I think the really important thing to keep in mind is none of these results are due to some magic. And like, I think we shouldn't even think about these toolings in such a we shouldn't put them in a really high kind of bar. It should just more be, this is a tool that can help me move some key levers that I would love to move if I had more people. That's as simple as it is. And then you as the leader have to be able to identify what needs to be adjusted and what shouldn't be adjusted. Because some things are probably absolutely working really well. We don't want to touch that. But these bits, we can definitely juice up a little bit and do a better job on. And so, that's what we've been really fortunate enough to see. When agents work really well, they work really well as a result of that.
Love it. Kieran, can you share some similar examples of success you've seen at Qualified so far?
Yeah, totally. I'll just start with like operational efficiency and just like time savings on the rep side, right? Like when you talk about removing the like research and personalization, which is where they're probably spending, 60 to 70% of their time, removing that from the reps plate's been really helpful. So it's helping just like augment the humans. They're becoming more efficient, more productive. And that's great. Outside of that, if we look at just relevance as performance on its own, in Q4 crushed it. As I mentioned, the top of our leaderboard from S1 and S2 attainment perspective. I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, but well above 100% attainment in Q4 for our initial hey, let's just let this thing run and see how it can do. Now we're entering a new year and I'm able to add $20 million of pipeline capacity into my business, right? It's $17 to $20 million, like right into the business. That's incredible. This quarter, because we've chosen to put relevance down in kind of these lower market segments, it runs into some issues that are more aligned with our business, not so much relevance as product, right? Hey, but budgets are concerns, things like that with these types of customers, but it's doing really well. It's going to hit its stage 1 target. We're probably forecasting around 90% on its stage 2 target, but for its first quarter of being, a program, really happy with these results, and it's playing an integral role in us getting to our numbers. If we did not have relevance performing, I would have a pipeline gap, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to, there's some areas for improvement, which we're always working on with the relevance team, and we'll do that kind of quarter over quarter. But again, it's providing a lot of capacity to the business right now, and that's a massive value add.
So I'd like to try to ask questions here, assuming that this isn't perfect for everyone. Not everyone can see these same results. And I'd be curious, Daniel, do you have some examples of companies and businesses that maybe should be more cautious about hiring an AI SDR for right now?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the most simple kind of litmus test that you can apply to this is, do you have a process that a human can do successfully? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of businesses out there who, they might not yet even have the right product market fit. They might not even be able to actually sell their product yet. They might not even know the context. And they expect an agent to sell something that a person couldn't. And so what I typically like to say is, think of your agent as a junior employee. It is not your VP. So if you're already relying on it to come up with your strategy and come up with your sales motion and come up with who you're contacting and come up with your message and pitch and everything else, then you're in trouble. So what I'd say is, first, we have to have the product, the team, the process in place. Like, you can think of it almost as like, that operational maturity, operational rigor. Typically, you start seeing this with companies maybe 400 or 500 employees plus. Qualified, I think, is very much an exception to that. They just have, like, when first Kieran showed me how they run things, it's just the most organized, the best reported on, the best metrics I've ever seen. So, and actually, we learned a lot from Kieran's team on how to do these reportings. I've asked him a few times on to show me how they reported things. So I think it's so important, because once you have that operational rigor, you can actually measure the right things. So when we started working with Kieran's team, he not only knew, okay, these are some of the challenges we have. We've tested a lot of things that didn't work for us, but we know these are the things we want to do. And then secondly, he said, let's give you the best performing person on our team to actually really focus on this. And then Rich, who is on the Qualified team, stepped in and really was able to teach the agent how to sell. So again, we have no idea how to sell, qualify the product. Like if it was just to us training the agent, we would be terrible at selling it. We'd probably be the top performing rep in the company. But because we had the top performing person distill their knowledge into the agent, now the agent was doing what they would do. And what they do is really good because they can sell the product. They already are really good at selling the product. The product is already really loved. Their buyers already buy it. And so it's like, okay, well, this is such a good motion. Let's now just translate it into an agent. And this is honestly, I think, the most important message I think I could share with people is agents are, again, they're not a magic bullet. They're just simply taking something that already works really well and helping you juice it up a little and helping you find opportunities in that space. And so if you're potentially looking to deploy, even if you're a large company, on a use case that's not necessarily clear and it's something that you're already struggling with, then I would really want to think about that decision. I want to question why that is, and is the challenge process and actually not yet being there, or is it just capacity? Because the simplest way to think about an agent, it's my junior employee that I'll deploy on a task. I'm going to tell her that process. And if you can't hire me and teach me maybe in a day how to do the job, you're probably going to struggle teaching an agent how to do that job. Mm-hmm. That's the current state of technology. If I'll summarize it, process and the right people in the team who can distill their subject matter expertise. If Qualified didn't already have such a great product with such a clearly working sales motion, it will not have worked. And if Rich wasn't deployed in the project so that he could give the agent the right knowledge, it also wouldn't work. So those two things are the bedrock of any successful agent deployment. And we've seen this time and time again with customers. So in the last 14 months, we've grown a lot. And in early days, we actually didn't qualify for those two things as much. Mm-hmm. And we didn't have great success with those customers. Now that's like the first thing like we check on any call is like, do you have these two things? Because if you don't, then this might not be the right approach for you.
So Kieran, given what you have rolled out at Qualified, what would be any cautionary tales you would tell to new customers or people that are trying to roll this out? And what would you have done differently to maybe accelerate success out of the gate?
Yeah, I think you've got to know what you want to accomplish, like with the tool. I'm even going to kind of piggyback on what Daniel said. Like you've got to have standardized operating procedures. I think if you've got documented like standard operating procedures that you can give to relevance, they're going to help you a ton, and you're really going to fly with them, right? But if you're like, hey, I want to get from A to B and I don't know how to get there, I'm trying to use you guys to help me figure that out, like you're going to have a bit of an issue. So that's just the one thing I would say. Standard operating procedures, you got to know where you want to go. The next thing is data. You've got to have like really sound data. You've got to be relatively hygienic as well. Like if your data's all over the place and CRM is a mess, like your output is only going to be as good as probably what's in CRM. Relevance can do a lot of things to augment and supplement and actually clean up your CRM. But, if it's a total mess, you don't have an account list, you don't know how you're going to market, you need to establish those things before you go and like work with a relevance. And then the next thing I was just going to say is focus and time. When I first started talking with the relevance team, in my mind, I was like, this is going to be a side project that I'll spend a couple of hours on every other day. And like, we're going to get this thing rolling. And I was so wrong. We bought it. We had one of our top performers really kind of adopt it and own it. And that's the reason it got to parity with our best BDR, right? Is because he nurtured it for that implementation period. So I wish I would have known that sooner, because I would have just found that SME and I would have put the SME on it right from the get-go. Daniel, you probably wasted 2 weeks with me in the beginning of the sales cycle before you got it like a true owner in the program. But really ownership, it takes a lot to get these things like up and running, but once you're up and running, it's really great, right? So just really kind of making sure you're allocating adequate resources there would be one of the things I would highlight as well.
I think your point about like finding sort of an early adopter in the organization that can really help prove that it works. Not only will you learn from that, and you have someone that leans in and is willing to work with you sort of through those sort of like scruffy moments when you start out, but it also builds a lot of credibility with the rest of the team once they see that someone that the rest of the sales team trusts and appreciates and respects is doing that. Last quick question.
I'll add on.
Yeah, please.
Matt. Like we put it in our leaderboard with our humans.
Nice.
Like we're like, this is how transparent we're going to be about this, right? We put it right there in our leaderboard. We reported on it every Friday to the entire company, and we would talk about how it's performing. That also made the program owners, the RevOps team, and it probably even Relevance's team a little bit feel like, oh man, we're pacing behind this week, or maybe last week we had a great week and this week we're not having as good of a week. But it would really drive Rich and I know the relevance team because they're, you know, an extension of our team, it would really drive them on these goals. So just being able to measure their performance of that agent, I think is really good for helping people understand like, hey, we got to move because we maybe didn't see the results we wanted to over the last 7 days. Right.
And I think showing that early results too, right? Showing the sort of the A/B, doing the A/B testing, so to speak, you know, across the team, using a rep or a team that is willing to lean in on it are some great ways to sort of accelerate your path to success and really build some trust and momentum and credibility along the way. Daniel, Kara, thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate all of your insights. This has been great. Thank you everyone for watching with us. Enjoy the rest of the summit.